Hello and welcome to another episode of Andy Ackray History. The house behind me was owned by W.M. Bent. He was a fur trader, and this house was actually here in 1864 during the Battle of Westport. Battle of Westport, October 21st through 23rd, 1864. Now, at this time, the Confederate line was just north of this house, so just behind this house, Confederate line was. And during the fighting, it was pushed back to this street here, 55th Street. So here's 55th Street, okay? And the sign says, the brick house in the rear was owned by W.M. Bent, fur trader. On Sunday, October 23rd, 1864, heavy fighting occurred here after Union General Curtis, that's Samuel Curtis, flanked the Confederate line by coming up a ravine, Rockwell Lane. His troops were a few rods north of the house. The Confederate line was defended by portions of Jackman's and Thompson's brigades of Shelby Division. Shelby is actually buried in Forest Hill Cemetery. At about noon, the Confederates were pushed back to 55th Street, so right here, and they withdrew south at 1 p.m. So they withdrew south at 1 p.m. because they were being decimated. So they started out with about 8,000 troops, and they fought a very hard fight, the biggest battle west of the Mississippi, and they came back and they were pushed back here. Now, the Union troops, well, they had called up basically the National Guard because they were afraid that the Confederates were going to take Kansas, and Quantrill had sacked Lawrence in 1863, so they were really afraid of that. So they had brought up all their troops. So they had 15,000 men and a cavalry from General Pleasanton that was 5,500 men. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So that was October 23rd, 1864. Today is August 20th, 2017. And today we still have this fighting. So there's been a lot in the news recently about Confederate monuments and taking down statues of Confederate generals like Robert E. Lee. And there was a big controversial, a violent protest interaction in Charlottesville, Virginia, over the removal of a statue of Robert E. Lee. Now, that caused quite the controversy throughout the country, and the whole country started talking about these monuments. Now, Kansas City has a large monument in Union Cemetery, and that marks the graves of the prisoners of war. They're unmarked, and here you go, the card says Rainbow Supremacy for All. So then you have a big monument in Forest Hill that has General Shelby right there too. So even here in these days, we had a monument here in the middle of 55th and Ward Parkway that was erected in 1930 by the Daughters of the Confederacy to celebrate the women of the Confederacy, to honor them and their contributions and their work. So you're in Missouri, it was a Confederate state, and they had this. But now, this street is busier than ever right now because so many people are upset about this. That monument there was vandalized on Friday, and today, Sunday, it is boarded up. You have police presence to make sure that no violence occurs, and you have people everywhere filming and talking about this. So right here, 55th and Ward Parkway, you have a mass grave where 3,000 men, both Union and Confederate, but you had fighting here, and so the Confederates and the Union soldiers were fighting here October 23rd, 1864, and today the fight still continues with this monument here at 55th and Ward Parkway, August 20th, 2017. So history goes on, and here's a little bit of the Civil War, you might say, that hasn't gone away. Right here in Kansas City, Missouri, just a few blocks from Kansas. This has been another episode of Andy Ackroyd History, and who knows where this episode of history will end up and what the end of the story will be. But hopefully it will be a happy ending. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.